Something that I've always really struggled with, to the point that it has caused me quite a bit of psychological distress, is decision making. Like, I have been historically notoriously bad at making decisions. And not just the big decisions, like choosing what to do with my career, although that is a big stressor in my life, but the small, somewhat insignificant decisions too, like deciding what to eat for lunch. I would look at a menu and I'd be like, do I want the poached eggs or the beef brisket? Eggs, beef, eggs, beef, eggs, beef, eggs, beef, eggs, beef, eggs, beef. I'm treating myself to lunch and I don't want to waste it. So I better make the right choice. And let's say that I chose eggs and the eggs come out and they're not very good. The white's still kind of runny. I would feel so much regret and I'd be like, damn, lunch is ruined because I made the wrong choice. Not ideal when you're trying to choose what to eat for lunch. Even worse when trying to do something important like decide what to do for your career path for your life. But I have spent most of my adult life listening to podcasts, listening to audiobooks, watching YouTube videos, TED Talks, reading books, looking for ways to make my brain a bit more helpful and a bit less of a hindrance. And from all of that research, today I want to talk about 3 particular pieces of advice which are just like the cream of the crop. So if you're somebody who really struggles to make decisions as much as I have in the past, these are things which I really wish that I knew 15 years ago, but I can't go back in time. So instead, I'm sharing them here in the hopes that they'll help you as much as they've helped me. Let's get into it. First up is a snippet of an interview with Dr. Ellen Langer, who is an American professor of psychology. This has quite possibly had the most beneficial impact on how I approach day-to-day decision making. Here it is.
Rather than waste your time being stressed over making the right decision, make the decision right. Randomly choose. Now, you can randomly choose if you want an Almond Joy or a Snickers. Nobody's gonna care, right? It's the exact same thing about getting married or not, taking the job or not. You can only live one life. If there were some magical way that I could live a life as somebody who's had 3 kids and somebody who hasn't had kids, maybe I can make a comparison, but you don't have that available to you.
Instead of wasting time trying to make the right decision, make the decision right. As an overthinker, this just smacked me. It was like, how have I not heard this sooner? Where has this been all my life? I'm so decision fatigued. I'm so tired of overthinking every single choice that I come up against in day-to-day life. Instead, I could just be randomly choosing one of them and then making it the right choice. So now when I go to a restaurant, I might be like, should I get the gnocchi or should I get the chicken parmigiana? If I find myself descending into a thought spiral, I just say to myself, all right, randomly choose gnocchi. And then I'm like, that's what I'm getting, and I've decided, and I push the menu away. And even if the gnocchi comes out and it's kind of underwhelming, it's like, well, at least I know next time not to get the gnocchi. I've learned something. And as Dr. Langer says, regret is so mindless because we presume that the choice we didn't make would have been the better one. But there's no way of knowing if that choice would have been better, worse, or the same. Like, I could be eating my average gnocchi thinking, damn, I really wish I got the Parmigiana. But who's to say if I went with the Parmigiana, it wouldn't have been worse? What if I got food poisoning? And then I'd be like chucking my guts up thinking, damn, I really wish I'd just gone with the gnocchi. There's no way of knowing. Whenever I catch myself going round and round in my head, unable to make a decision, I just say to myself, often out loud, all right, randomly choose this. Make it the right choice. Mark Manson has this theory that a lot of the mental health problems that we have in today's society is because of this paradox of choice from these seemingly infinite number of options that we have, which, on paper doesn't seem like such a bad thing, but in practice, it can become really paralyzing. On his podcast, he uses the example of a college student who has so many more options than their parents or grandparents ever did, yet this abundance of opportunity tortures them, and no matter what they end up picking, they ultimately end up less satisfied. Sound relatable? Because it does to me. I have spent my entire adult life second-guessing myself, overthinking what I want to do with my limited existence. Growing up, I always honestly wanted to be an actor. sometimes a doctor, sometimes a vet, sometimes a marine biologist or a zoologist. And then when I was about 15, 16 and YouTube came onto the scene, I thought it would be really cool to be a YouTuber. So there was also that. But I've always had a wide variety of interests, and I was pretty damn good at biology and psychology in high school, so immediately after finishing high school, I went and started studying a Bachelor of Science, and ultimately ended up double majoring in zoology and biology. But the whole time that I was studying science, I kept thinking to myself, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? Is this going to fulfill me? I'm already so behind. I need to make up my mind. Time is running out. The void's getting closer. And I was like 19, 20 years old, like, chill out. There were definitely aspects of the course that I really enjoyed. I did a research trip up to an island and I got to watch sea turtles lay eggs, like really some really cool stuff. But by the end of the 3 years, I think I was just so fatigued with reading all of these academic journals, all these articles, and I was just ready to do something completely different. So I went and I studied drama, which was such a harsh U-turn. But pretty much since switching from science to acting about 13 years ago now, I have spent the last 13 years wondering if I've made the right decision and asking myself, what if? What if I'd found a job in science? Would I be doing meaningful work? Would I feel fulfilled in my job? Acting isn't exactly a stable career, and it is honestly probably the source of a lot of my anxiety. Would I have been less anxious with a more stable career and a more stable income? So much second guessing, so much ruminating. And on the topic of regret being mindless and you can't live both lives, I had some really, really interesting conversations recently. I was at a party and I didn't know that many people. Some of them were complete strangers and some of them were friends of friends who I went to the same university as them when I was studying science, but I hadn't kept in contact with them. And of course the topic came up of career, what we've been doing with ourselves for the last 10 plus years. And they asked me, what's it like actually going after your dreams and working in a creative field? And I said to them, look, to be totally honest with you, like sometimes it's great. When I actually book a gig and I'm on set and I'm acting, I really enjoy it. But a lot of the time, I'm not actually acting. It's a lot of getting an audition and having to film an audition within 2 or 3 days, and then spending all this time on that and just shooting it out into the void and then never hearing anything back. And to be totally honest with you, ever since leaving science, I have wondered whether I've made the right choice. And one of them said, I've often wondered if I'd made the right choice with my career. But the grass is always greener, like, how do you know? Which was really refreshing to hear, honestly, because earlier in the night he was telling me about what he'd been doing. He's had the opportunity to live overseas and he's worked with some like really big, well-known companies, and it sounded like the projects he was working on were really cool. And I was honestly feeling like jealous, and it was, you know, this is someone I went to uni at the same time as, like, is this the sort of career I could have been having? Have I made the right choice? But then he is saying that he also second guesses his choices. And then there was a guy who I'd met for the first time that night, and he'd had the opportunity to move overseas to Singapore with his job, which again, I thought sounded really cool. And he said to me, I've made a decision with my career, which has enabled me to travel the world, and there are a lot of benefits to my job, and there are a lot of things about it that I really enjoy. But I often wonder what life would have been like if I'd decided to follow my dream instead. And again, it was like, wow, that's really refreshing to hear. Like, it just seems like everyone has these doubts. So these interactions helped me realize that even if I had stuck with science, and even if I had gotten the best case scenario out of it, I'd probably be wondering, what if I'd switched to acting? Where could I be if I'd taken the risk and I'd done acting when I was 21? I'd probably be imagining the best case scenario by switching over to acting. Just like I'm imagining a good scenario if I'd stayed with science. But the reality is, there's a good chance that I could have got a job in science that was just kind of okay, and it ultimately wasn't fulfilling, and I'd be thinking, why didn't I do something that made me feel fulfilled? We tend to assume the best case scenario for the path not taken. But as Dr. Langer says, you can only live one life, and there's no way of knowing. And constantly second guessing ourselves, wondering if we've made the right choice, beating ourselves up about it, it doesn't get us anywhere. And this is if we do choose something. A lot of the time we just feel so overwhelmed with all the hypothetically possible choices available to us. We put it off and we put it off, and we end up just kind of floating through. And all these infinite alternate lives, all of these unlived ghost lives can really get you stuck. And this is where we have to accept a hard truth. We are finite creatures with a finite amount of time to exist, and we cannot do everything. And this is the main lesson that I took away from my second big influence on decision making, Oliver Burkeman. Oliver Burkeman is the author of many books, including 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals. In this busy modern time that we live in, most of the advice seems to be around becoming more efficient and more productive with our time to get more things done. Oliver has a bit of a different take, and that is that we will never have enough time to do all the things that we want to do. Which honestly hit me pretty hard. But after you wrap your head around it, it actually becomes quite freeing. Oliver talks about how the average human lifespan is about 4,000 weeks. You may have seen this anxiety-inducing life calendar, but daunting as this is, it can be really helpful in putting things into perspective. Oliver says that for a whole number of reasons, we've all started to believe that we can do a lot more than what we realistically can. I'm going to read some notes so I don't butcher his ideas. The thing is, there will always be so much more to do and so much more worth doing than you will ever have time for. And the mismatch between what we could hypothetically do, what we can imagine ourselves doing, and what we actually can do is really painful. He says that part of the reason why we hold off making important decisions, like me choosing a career, for example, is to hang on to our perfect fantasies where multiple desirable futures can coexist at the same time. So what we do instead of feeling the discomfort of being limited is we try to hold on to that feeling of control by not consciously making decisions and instead keeping our options open. As I mentioned earlier, I have done this for years with my career. I have so many interests and I can imagine myself doing so many different careers, doing so many different things with my life, and I would almost definitely be happier if I just chose something, made it the right choice, and stuck with it. But instead, I constantly jump around, not sure what the right answer is, constantly overthinking each possible choice, trying to predict what the best outcome will be, and it's never worked, but I do it anyway. And I avoid making a decision, probably because I get to keep control and I get to keep all these possible futures alive in my mind, but not in the world. Have you ever told yourself that your real life will begin once you land that job, buy a car, move overseas, get married? Oliver says that we do this in order to avoid the anxiety of knowing that this, right now, is our only true shot of life. So we need to do the things that we claim that are important to us right now, not in some hypothetical future when our situation is better. There is no moment of truth coming where things will finally make sense and our real lives will begin at last. This line really hit me. Every decision to spend a portion of time on one thing is a decision to not spend it on something else. As finite human beings, we are always, at any time in our lives, neglecting any number of important tasks. But the way that we make progress on anything is by neglecting everything else. He emphasizes that in order to build meaningful lives, we need to learn to tolerate the anxiety of not being able to do everything at once, instead of trying to defeat that anxiety by trying to do multiple things at the same time. And the reason that you're never going to get efficient enough to do everything is because your list of potential to-do tasks is essentially infinite. So trying to become more efficient to get more done in order to beat time actually just makes you busier and more stressed. He says that once we finally grasp that there is no chance ever that we are going to get absolutely everything done, that's when we can finally start making progress on the things that are actually important to us. He says that flexing your decision-making muscle and actually getting into the habit of making decisions is a great antidote to anxiety and procrastination. Which makes complete sense because being stuck in that state of indecision is awful. Like once you actually make a decision and you start moving forward, It feels so much better. And it's like, why did I take so long to come to a decision? I should have just chosen this to begin with. I definitely had way too many competing priorities. I was trying to do too many things at once, but I felt really guilty about taking anything off my list because I felt like I wasn't making enough progress to begin with. So it just felt lazy to do less things when I already felt like I wasn't doing enough. But that's because I was always jumping around, anxiously swapping between tasks or just prioritizing the wrong things. Oliver has two practical ways, which are essentially enhanced to-do lists, in order to help decide what to focus on and actually start making meaningful progress. The first one is to nominate one main goal from each domain of your life and to focus on that goal before moving on to the next thing. So for me, I've got things like physical fitness, YouTube, acting, work, life, etc. So with YouTube, for example, it would be make the decision-making video. And I might film a couple of videos back to back in order to be more effective and save time. But then when it comes to editing them, it's like, I'm gonna finish editing the decision-making video before I start editing the next video. Number two is to have two lists, a closed list and an open list. Do now, do later. This, not this. Whatever you want to call them, do whatever like gives you a kick in your brain, write that. An open list is for anything and everything that enters your brain. Anything you can think of that you think is a goal that you want to achieve, you can dump it into the open list. It can be crazy long, but that's totally fine because you're not going to tackle this list directly. You then feed tasks from the open list to the closed list. The closed list will have a predetermined maximum number of entries, for example, 10. You might also have an on-hold list when there's something that you're waiting on someone else's confirmation or something for, like outside of your direct control. So you could have that too if you wanted. So you are never going to get through everything on your open list, but that's totally fine because you are never going to anyway. And the great thing about the closed list is that you're going to make meaningful progress on things that you've consciously decided are important to you. So overall, it's not just about prioritizing important tasks over not important tasks. It's about accepting that we're mortal and we don't have unlimited time. And there are certain things that are important to us which we'll have to say no to in order to make meaningful progress on things that we've decided are really important to us. So what am I saying so far? Do we just need to accept that we can't do everything, choose a career at random, make it the right choice and stick to it for the rest of our lives? Like, I'm gonna be a lawyer. No. I mean, you could, but personally, I'm pretty sure that I don't want to be a lawyer. I can mark that off the list. So how do we narrow down our shortlist? So my third and final great piece of advice was an Instagram reel that my friend sent me, and now I can't find it anywhere. I'm sure that I saved it, and it's just disappeared. So I don't know if it was deleted, but if you know the video, please link me to it because I would love to credit the creator. Luckily, I did take notes at the time. So essentially, she says, a lot of us have this idea that we just need to figure out what the right move is, and once we do, we can do it, and we'll be like, great, I figured it out. I chose the right thing. But it's not about that. If you're trying to think your way to the right decision before taking action, you will get stuck. You will get stuck in a loop, and you're just gonna go round and round and round in your head like a fucking thought tornado, and you will get nowhere. Accurate. In reality, what you should be doing is actually trying things. It may sound counterintuitive. You may be thinking, but if I'm trying the wrong thing, then I'm just wasting time. But what's wasting time is sitting around ruminating on the same thoughts, believing that we can think our way to a decision, but that's not how it works. We're trying to predict the future, what's going to make us the most satisfied, in order to hold on to control. We're at the mercy of our thoughts and anxiety, and those guys can be dicks. They want to keep you exactly where you are, safely in the known, even if the known is making you feel stuck and miserable. So give things a good go. Slow down and take the time to actually try things properly. That way you'll have a much better idea about whether something is the right fit for you than going round and round in our heads trying to predict the future when we just don't have the right information to do that. So how do we bring all this together? So you could make a list of all the different hypothetical things you would like to try out, choose one at random, and then give it a good go. If you like it and you think this is a good fit, then great. If you decide it's not a good fit, Also great, you can mark it off and try something else. This may seem slow, but you'll probably make better progress than just sitting around ruminating on the same thoughts over and over again because you're not getting any new information. If you're anything like me, you've been doing it for years and it hasn't worked so far, so what makes us think that it's going to work in the future? So for me, I've got this massive list in my head of all these possible careers that I could hypothetically see myself doing. And I have spent so much time trying to imagine myself in these roles, trying to predict which thing will be the best fit for me without actually having enough information to make that prediction. And I've most likely been putting off making a decision because I know on some level that saying yes to one thing means saying no to the other things. And even though I knew that I could just try one thing and then if it wasn't the right fit I could switch to something else, I thought, but I already feel so behind, I need to just make a decision. But toward the end of last year, I thought to myself, what do I keep coming back to? What keeps resurfacing in my mind the most regularly? And that thing was YouTube. Because even if I think about the potential of doing further training and becoming qualified, getting a job in science, even in that scenario, I think I would like to create YouTube content on the side talking about that science. So I thought, okay, 2025, I'm going to focus on YouTube and give it a proper go. Because again, in the past, I have made quite a bit of content, but it's honestly been fairly sporadic and really inconsistent on which niche I was focusing on. Which is the other thing. Now that I made the decision to focus on YouTube this year, I knew that I needed to do some exploration to decide which niche or which sorts of topics I wanted to focus on. And I know that I don't have to focus on just one topic, but I need to do sort of related content so that the algorithm knows who to shoot that content off to. So I spent a bit of time making travel content and seeing how that felt. I did a bit of science content. I did loads of gaming stuff. And most recently, I've been focusing on content here. And even though I've only released a couple of videos for this channel this year, the first one that I released did a lot better than what I was anticipating it would. And I think that gave me a bit of an insight as to this potentially being the area that I should focus on. And you know what? When I'm making content like this, I don't feel like I'm racing against the clock, like, oh, I need to figure this out. I'm already so behind. The void, I can feel it coming. I feel good. I feel calm, like I'm on track. So that's probably a good sign. The other thing with YouTube is I'm actively trying to shift my focus away from being perfect to being authentic. Because I feel like that's the content I want to see. That's the content people seem to be interested in. And trying to be perfect takes so much more energy and ultimately has a worse output. So hopefully that authenticity is translating across through the camera into the video, through to the internet, etc. Hopefully it's good. Anyway, to summarize, instead of wasting time and energy trying to make the right decision, make the decision right. Randomly choose. We can't live multiple lives, and there is no way of knowing if the other choices would have been better, worse, or the same. Except that there are always going to be more things to do than we can ever get done. Acknowledge that you only have one life, you have limited time, and you'll have to say no to some things that are important to you in order to make meaningful progress on the things that are really important to you. Stop trying to think your way to the right answer. Slow down, try some things out, gather some information, then use that experience to narrow things down and make a decision. Possibly by randomly choosing one of the good options. All right, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching. I hope that you got value out of this and that these tips are gonna help you the same way that they help me and that you can start making more decisions more easily. If you like this video, feel free to click on my face to subscribe to the channel, or you can see another video here that the algorithm recommends for you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.